Something really interesting is happening in Thailand. It's not about politics. It's about how business gets done. And the entire landscape is being reshaped by just 3 letters: E, S, and G. We're going to explore how this whole movement is going from a friendly suggestion to the actual law of the land.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll dig into why this big green shift is even happening right now. Then we'll check out the financial machine they're building to power it all and see how companies are actually reacting. After that, we get to the big turning point, when the rules get real. And finally, we'll take a peek at what this all means for the future of business in Thailand.
All right, let's dive right in with Section 1, Thailand's big green shift. Now, to really get our heads around this, we need to answer 2 key questions. First, what is ESG really? And second, why on earth has it become such a huge national priority for Thailand, like right now?
Okay, so first things first, what are we even talking about? ESG. You can think of it like a company's report card, but it goes way beyond just profits. It's scoring them on, well, everything else. Their carbon footprint, how they manage waste, but also how they treat their people, how they protect customer data. It's the whole picture of a company's real-world impact.
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? I mean, with all the economic challenges going on in the world, why has this specific framework suddenly become such a massive focus for an entire country? Why now?
Well, it turns out it's a mix of things, really. A combination of outside pressures and homegrown ambition. So on one hand, you've got these big global forces, right? Things like climate change vulnerability and trying to line up with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. But on the other hand, it's also a super strategic economic play. It's a way to attract modern, forward-thinking investment and just be more competitive on the world stage. It's about survival, for sure, but it's also about strategy.
Okay, so now that we know why this is happening, let's get into the how. Because, it's one thing to have a big goal, but it's a whole other challenge to build the entire financial machine you need to actually pull it off.
And this diagram right here, it's basically the blueprint. It's what they're calling a sustainable finance ecosystem, and it's designed to be this self-powering cycle. See, you start with investors who are actively looking for green projects. That demand then pushes companies to go out and raise money for those green projects. But to make sure it's all legit, you need solid verification. And to make the whole thing run smoothly, you need a workforce that knows what it's doing. Every single piece fuels the next. It's a pretty smart system.
So to get that ecosystem up and running, regulators are zeroing in on 3 key things. First, they need to develop a taxonomy, which is basically a fancy word for a shared dictionary, so that when someone says green, everyone agrees on what that actually means. Second, they've got to improve the data, making sure the info companies are putting out there is reliable and easy for everyone to get their hands on. And third, you need real incentives, the classic carrots and sticks, to reward the good players and give a little nudge to those falling behind.
So, you might be wondering, is this just some small, niche thing? No way! The scale here is absolutely massive. Get this. Companies that make up a whopping 82% of the total market value on Thailand's stock exchange are now covered by these ESG ratings. This isn't some fringe movement. This is the new mainstream, plain and simple.
All right, so we've seen the high-level strategy. Now let's get down to the ground level. How are actual Thai businesses responding to all this? What's happening in the real world?
So if you actually dig into what companies are reporting, a really interesting picture starts to form. It's surprisingly balanced. You can see the focus is split pretty evenly across the big themes: environmental stuff, taking care of employees, solid governance, and helping out the community. This tells us that companies aren't just looking for the easy wins here. They're trying to tackle this from all angles.
And believe me, this isn't just a bunch of fancy words in a report. We're talking about real, concrete actions. Companies are seriously cutting their emissions, not just from their own factories, but from their entire supply chains. They're rolling out new employee benefits, like allowances for working from home. They're putting their suppliers under the microscope, checking their social and environmental track records, and they're putting money back into local communities. It's really happening.
Okay, but it's not a perfect success story just yet. As companies are trying to step up, some legal experts are pointing out that the current rulebook has some pretty big holes. A major one they've highlighted is that the existing laws just aren't doing enough to protect biodiversity on private land. So there's definitely still more work to be done.
And this is where we get to the real game changer, the critical turning point in this whole story. This is the moment when ESG stops being a voluntary, nice-to-do thing and starts being a mandatory, legally binding obligation.
You see, the problem with purely voluntary reporting has always been a couple of things. First, it's just inconsistent. If there's no standard, how can you possibly compare what one company is doing to another? And second, you've got the huge risk of greenwashing, where companies can talk a big game about their environmental efforts, but it might be all smoke and mirrors.
This slide just lays it out so clearly. On the left, that's the old way of doing things. Voluntary reports all over the place and at constant risk of greenwashing. But look at the right side. That's the new world. Mandatory due diligence, standardized legal rules, and, this is the big one, real legal accountability for companies. It's a massive shift from a friendly suggestion to, you must do this.
What's really pushing this change is a proposed new law. It's focused on human rights and environmental due diligence, or HREDD for short. And this law would mean businesses have to get serious. They'd be required to publish their policies for everyone to see, prove that they're actually monitoring their own impact, send in annual reports to the government, and even set up ways for people to file complaints if things go wrong.
So what's lighting the fire under this big legal push? Well, a huge driver is Thailand's ambition to join the OECD. That's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. If you want to be a member of that club of developed economies, you've got to play by their rules, and that means proving you meet their very high standards for responsible business.
Okay, so we've covered the why, the how, and the what's happening now. Let's wrap things up by looking over the horizon. What does this new ESG-driven world actually mean for the future of the Thai economy?
When you look at this timeline, you can really see the whole story unfold. It all started with some gentle nudging from the stock exchange. Then it got serious with the construction of that whole financial ecosystem we talked about. That led to this wave of corporate action, and now it's hitting its final form, a maturity stage, where the rules are mandatory and have real legal teeth.
And it's really important to remember, this isn't happening in some kind of economic bubble. The wider economy is actually getting stronger, with retail income projected to grow pretty steadily over the next couple of years. And that economic health is so important because it gives businesses the confidence and the cash to invest in these long-term sustainability goals instead of just scrambling for short-term survival.
Make no mistake, the ripple effects from this are going to be huge. This isn't just going to change things for the giant corporations. It's going to flow through entire supply chains, it's going to influence where international investment goes, and it's going to completely change the game for how even small and medium-sized businesses have to operate if they want to compete.
And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. A lot of people see new regulations as just a burden, right? More red tape. But in a world that is demanding more and more transparency and sustainability, could Thailand's big bet, this pivot from voluntary promises to hard and fast rules, actually become its greatest competitive advantage on the global stage?